The man entered the diner just before dawn, as the first streaks of gray touched the wet streets of the small coastal town. His steps were slow, deliberate, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had walked through too many storms. The bell above the door gave a tired ring, and a few heads turned toward him. Curious and cautious, at the same time his jacket looked old, the fabric frayed at the shoulders, the navy insignia faded by time and salt air. There were medals pinned unevenly along, the chest each one a silent story that no one dared to ask about yet. The sight stirred whispers among the regulars. They had seen pretenders before drifters claiming service for free meals or sympathy, and this one looked no different, too clean, shaven, too quiet, too out of place. He sat at the counter, his posture straight but not proud, as if he was trying to remember what it meant to stand tall. His hands were calloused, his knuckles scarred, and when he took off his cap, the lines around, his eyes deepened, revealing years of discipline and loss. The waitress named Carla approached with cautious courtesy, her eyes flicking from his cap to the patches on his sleeve. She asked if he wanted coffee, and he nodded once. No words needed. She poured it into a chipped mug, the steam curling between them like a secret. He sipped slowly, staring at the reflection of the storm through the diner window, as if waiting for something to arrive with the rain. At the far table a man named Pete leaned, forward whispering to his buddies under his breath, "He's a fake, mark my words. The real ones never wear their medals like that. They keep them locked away because they don't need to prove anything." His friends chuckled, nodding in agreement. Small towns thrived on rumors, and this was a fresh one. Something to talk about after too many quiet nights. Carla refilled the mug again. The man still had not spoken, but she felt a strange calm around him. Something unspoken that told her he was not here by accident. He glanced up once, and their eyes met for a moment. It felt like he was looking through her, not at her, searching for someone else, or maybe remembering another face from another place. The diner clock ticked too loudly, the sound of rain against the window grew heavier, the air thick with the smell of salt and coffee. Outside, a pair of teenagers walked past, pointing their phones toward the diner window. One of them snapped a picture and sent it to a local veterans page, the caption, "Reading another wannabe hero flashing fake badges within minutes," the post spread across the county, drawing comments filled with outrage and doubt. People typed stories of con artists and stolen valor. They spoke of men who wore false pride while real soldiers lay forgotten beneath white stones. The post caught the eye of someone far away, someone who had seen that same tattoo long ago. Inside the diner, Pete finally stood up and walked toward the counter, his boots scuffing against the worn tile floor. He stopped beside the man and tapped the counter with a smirk. "You got a lot of nerve walking in here wearing that jacket," he said, his voice rising just enough for everyone to hear. The man did not answer, only looked at him calmly as, if waiting for the storm to pass, Pete continued talking about respect and lies and the price of honor. The others watched, expecting the stranger to crack, but he stayed silent, his gaze steady and unflinching. His silence only made them angrier. Carla tried to diffuse it, offering more coffee, pretending not to notice the tension, but it was too late. The air had turned sharp. Then the man reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a folded piece of cloth. He spread it on the counter. It was an old mission flag, the fabric torn and stained but still bearing a faint emblem, the letters almost erased by time. Pete leaned in to look at it and frowned. None of the symbols made sense to him, but something about it felt too real, too detailed to be fake. The door opened again, letting in a gust of cold air and rain. A young police officer stepped inside, shaking water from his jacket. He had seen the viral post and came to investigate. The stranger turned slightly, his expression unreadable. The officer asked for identification, but before he could answer, a sound outside made everyone pause. The deep growl of engines, several dark vehicles pulling into the parking lot. Headlights cutting through the fog, the officer glanced out the window, confusion spreading across his face. 3 men in navy coats stepped out of the vehicles, their movements precise and purposeful. One of them older, tall, his presence commanding. He walked straight to the diner door, pushing it open without hesitation. The chatter died instantly as every eye turned toward him. The Admiral stepped inside, rain dripping from his hat, his gaze sweeping across the room until it landed on the stranger at the counter. The air felt electric. The officer stiffened, unsure. Of what to do? Carla froze with the coffee pot halfway to the mug. Pete took a step back, realizing too late that he might have made a mistake. The Admiral moved closer, his boots echoing softly on the tile floor, his expression unreadable. He stopped, beside the stranger, and for a long moment they said nothing, just studied each other as if confirming something that had been left unsaid for years. Then the Admiral lifted his sleeve, revealing a mark on his forearm, a tattoo worn and faded matching, the one that peeked from under the stranger's cuff. It was the same symbol from the old mission flag, the same one erased from records long ago. The crowd stared in disbelief, unable to understand what they were seeing. Carla felt her throat tighten. She could sense that whatever bound these 2 men together was older and deeper than anyone could guess. The Admiral spoke quietly, his voice low and heavy with memory. He called the stranger by a name no one in the diner had heard before. A name that carried weight and silence and history. The kind of name that belonged in files locked away behind government seals. Pete stepped back further, shame and confusion washing over him as realization settled in. He muttered something under his breath, and left the diner, his head bowed against the rain. The others stayed frozen in their seats, afraid to breathe, afraid to speak. The Admiral placed a hand on the stranger's shoulder and gave a nod that said everything. Words could not. The stranger stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He placed a few crumpled bills beside his untouched meal and turned toward the door as he passed Carla. He paused and gave a small nod of thanks, the kind of gesture that meant more than any apology. She wanted to ask who he really was, what he had done, what the tattoo meant, but the words never came. He stepped outside into the rain, joining the Admiral and the others. The convoy engines roared to life, and in moments they were gone, leaving only wet tire tracks fading into the mist inside the diner. No one spoke for a long time. The coffee steamed. The rain fell, and the sound of the bell above the door still echoed in the quiet room. Every person there knew they would never forget what they had seen, even if they could never fully believe it. And somewhere deep inside each of them a single thought lingered, that sometimes the truth hides not in stories or medals, but in the silence of those who have seen too much and said too little. Convoy rolled down the rain-soaked highway, leaving the small diner behind its headlights, cutting through the mist like blades of white fire. The Admiral sat beside the man in silence, their faces lit by the dim dashboard glow they did not need. Words, the years between them, spoke louder than any voice could. The tattoo on their arms was a mark of a mission that had never existed, a story erased from history books and sealed under classified ink. They had both carried the memory alone, and now fate had crossed their paths in a place where no one was supposed to remember. The Admiral broke the silence at last. His tone calm but heavy with years of command, he told the man that someone high up had seen the photo, someone who still owed him a debt, the kind of debt written in blood, not paper. The man nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The rain tapped against the glass in a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, distant and slow. The Admiral said they had orders to keep him hidden, that his survival was not meant to be known, that his name was struck off every list before the mission even began. The man gave a faint smile as if he had expected nothing less. They reached the old naval base at the edge of the coast. The place, long abandoned, its gates rusted and the sign nearly swallowed by ivy. The convoy stopped, and the two men stepped out. The wind howled across the empty tarmac, carrying the smell of salt and metal. The Admiral led him to a hangar where a single light flickered above the door. Inside stood a few men, waiting men who bore the same tattoo. Each one older, each one silent, as if speaking might break the fragile thread that still bound them together. The man looked around, recognizing faces he had thought long dead. He saw the scars, the eyes that no longer blinked at shadows, the quiet nods that replaced words. They gathered around the flag he had carried folded for years and laid it across the table like a ghost returning home for one final salute. The Admiral said the mission had been buried to protect the truth, but the truth had a way of finding air even after decades beneath the sea. The man listened and felt the weight of all those lost years pressing down, but in that silence, there was peace. The kind that only comes when the past finally stops chasing you. Outside, the rain began to ease and the first pale light of morning touched the broken windows. The Admiral looked toward the horizon and then back at him. Their eyes met in a shared understanding that nothing left to be said could change what had already been written. The man turned, walking into the fading storm, his steps steady, his figure slowly disappearing into the mist.